Commander Daniel Brooks had seen many things during his 20 years in the military, but nothing prepared him for what he found in the Cascade Mountains that cold afternoon. His patrol helicopter had been flying routine missions over the remote region when his sensors picked up an unusual energy signature coming from a deep canyon 3 miles east of the main ridge. Daniel ordered the pilot to investigate. The helicopter descended slowly, careful not to disturb any unstable rocks. When they finally saw the ship, Daniel's breath caught in his throat. It was massive, easily 50 yards long, with a curved hull of dark silver metal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. The design was nothing like any human technology. Strange symbols covered the outer panels, and several sections of the hull were scorched black as if burned by weapons fire. Daniel knew immediately what he was looking at. This was a ship. The markings were unmistakable. He had studied countless images of vessels during his military training. 10 years ago, the Empire had made first contact with Earth. After weeks of careful negotiation, a non-interference treaty had been signed. They had agreed to leave Earth alone and allow humanity to develop without interference. In return, humans agreed to stay out of affairs and their territories in space. But something had gone very wrong. This ship had clearly been in a serious battle. The rear section was torn open, exposing twisted metal and dark corridors inside. Emergency lights blinked weakly from within the hull. Daniel made a quick decision. "Take us down," he told the pilot. "Land about 100 yards from the wreckage." The pilot hesitated. "Sir, this could be dangerous. We should call the base and ask for instructions." "If there are survivors, they may not have time," Daniel said. "I am responsible for all life in this region. I will take full responsibility." The helicopter landed on a flat section of rock near the crash site. Daniel grabbed a medical pack and a small handheld light. He moved toward the ship carefully, keeping his weapon ready but not drawn. The ground around the crash was scorched and smoking. He could smell something chemical and strange in the air. As Daniel entered the damaged section of the ship, his eyes struggled to adjust to the dim light. The interior was twisted and broken. Equipment hung from the ceiling and strange fluids dripped from damaged pipes. Then he heard a sound. Someone was crying. Daniel moved toward the sound. In a side chamber, he found them. 3 young female aliens were huddled together on the floor. Their skin was blue-gray and smooth like porcelain. They had large eyes that were dark and round, and their bodies were slender and delicate. One of them looked up at Daniel with fear and confusion. "Do not hurt us," she said in accented but clear English. "We are not soldiers." Daniel immediately lowered his hands and kept his weapon pointing away. "I am not here to hurt you," he said slowly and clearly. "I am here to help. My name is Commander Daniel Brooks. I am from Earth. Are you injured?" The eldest of the 3 females came forward slightly. She was moving slowly, and Daniel could see blood on her shoulder. "I am Princess, daughter of Empress of the Empire," she said. "My sisters In and Aura are with me. We were traveling to meet with our father in the outer territories when we were attacked by the pirates. They wanted to capture us for ransom money." Daniel knelt down slowly, making himself appear less threatening. "You are safe now," he said. "I will help you, but I need to know how badly you are injured." Showed him the wound on her shoulder. It was deep but did not seem to be life-threatening. The other 2 princesses had injuries as well, but they appeared stable. Daniel carefully cleaned their wounds using medical supplies from his pack and wrapped them with bandages. As he worked, the fear in their eyes began to fade slightly. "How did you know to help us?" asked. "Humans have been forbidden from affairs." "Because you need help," Daniel said simply. "That is enough." After he finished treating them, Daniel faced a difficult decision. He knew that if the military found out about these 3 alien princesses, it would create an enormous political situation. The Empire would likely believe that Earth had been hiding knowledge of their location. It could destroy the treaty that had kept peace between the 2 species for a decade. But he also knew that 3 injured princesses could not survive in the mountains alone. They needed shelter, food, and medical care. He needed to get them somewhere safe where he could keep them hidden while he figured out how to contact their people safely. Daniel made his choice. "I am going to take you somewhere safe," he told them. "There is a ranger station about 5 miles from here. It is empty during winter. You can hide there while I work to contact your people, but I need you to understand something. What I am doing goes against my government's rules. If we are discovered, there will be serious trouble for me. I am doing this because it is right, not because I have permission." Looked at her 2 younger sisters. They exchanged something that might have been a look of understanding, then turned back to Daniel. "You risk much for us, Commander," she said. "We will remember this." Daniel helped the 3 princesses to their feet. They moved slowly, still weak from their injuries and the crash. He supported as they made their way back to the helicopter. The pilot stared in shock when he saw them, but Daniel said nothing and ordered him to fly to the ranger station. As the helicopter lifted into the air, Daniel watched the ship disappear below the clouds. He knew that his life had just changed in a way he could never undo. He had chosen to protect 3 alien princesses instead of following the rules. Whatever came next, there would be no going back. The 3 young women sat quietly in the helicopter, watching the landscape below with a mixture of fear and hope. They had crashed on an alien world with almost no hope of survival. Then a human warrior had found them and risked everything to keep them safe. They did not yet understand why he had made this choice, but they knew that their lives were now connected to his in ways neither of them could predict. The ranger station was a small wooden building about 30 miles from the nearest town. It had basic supplies, a working stove, clean water from a mountain spring, and enough space to hide 3 alien princesses from the world. Daniel spent the first day settling them in and making sure they had everything they needed. In an aura, the 2 younger sisters were afraid of him at first. They watched his every move carefully, as if expecting him to harm them at any moment, but seemed different. The oldest princess observed Daniel carefully, trying to understand his motivations and his character. She began to ask him questions about Earth and about humans in general. "Why would you risk your safety for us?" asked him on the second day. They were sitting by the window, watching the snow fall outside. "You do not know us. We are not your people. In many species, such behavior would be considered foolish." Daniel thought carefully before answering. "Where I come from, we have a saying," he said. "It goes like this: the measure of who we are is determined by what we do when no one is watching and when it costs us something. I found you injured and alone. Helping you was not a difficult choice, even though it was a dangerous one." Was quiet for a long time. "My mother would say that was illogical," she finally said. "The Empire teaches us that survival comes first. Personal interests come second. The interests of others are often considered unimportant." "Then your mother will not understand why I did this," Daniel said. "But I believe that it is only when we risk things for people we do not know that we show what we are really made of." Over the next few days, something changed. As Daniel provided food, warmth, and protection without asking anything in return, In and Aura began to see him differently. They started asking him about Earth. They wanted to know about his family, his job, and why he had chosen to become a soldier. Daniel told them stories about his life, about his younger brother who had died in an accident years ago, about his decision to protect others so that others would not have to suffer the same loss. In was the first to warm to him completely. She was the smallest of the 3 sisters, and Daniel's stories about helping others seemed to connect with something deep inside her. By the 4th day, she was sitting next to him willingly and asking him questions about his life. Aura followed soon after, becoming more comfortable and talkative, but was watching something deeper. She was studying Daniel's character, his strength, and his decisions. She was trying to understand if he could really be trusted, or if he was just waiting for the right moment to betray them to his government. On the 5th day, Daniel brought something that changed everything. He had managed to get into the ranger station's storage and found an old communication device. It was not advanced, but he had worked for hours to modify it so that it could broadcast on the same frequencies they used in their long-distance communications. "I have tried to create a way to contact your people," he told. "This device can send a distress signal on frequencies. However, I do not know if anyone will receive it or when rescue might come. I am also putting myself in significant danger by helping you do this. My government will eventually discover what I have done." Took the device from him. She examined it carefully, noting the careful work Daniel had put into modifying it. For the first time, tears came to her eyes. "You are giving them the ability to find us," she said softly. "You are choosing to lose your safety for us." "Yes," Daniel said simply, "because it is right." That night told him everything. She explained that her mother, Empress, had ruled the empire for 40 years. The empire was enormous and complex. Many factions within it wanted to see fail. The three princesses were living symbols of the Empress's power and stability. If they disappeared, enemies within the empire would claim that could not even protect her own children. It would create chaos and possibly civil war. "My mother believes that showing weakness is the same as accepting defeat," said. "She has made hard choices to keep our people safe. But she is also just one person, and she cannot be everywhere. The pirates attacked us because they thought they could force the empire to pay a ransom, and more importantly, they thought they could destabilize my mother's rule." Daniel listened carefully. He was beginning to understand the larger world beyond Earth, the complex politics of alien civilizations that he had never really considered before. "What is your mother like?" he asked. Smiled slightly. It was the first true smile Daniel had seen from her. "She is hard," said. "She is difficult and demanding. She does not easily trust others, but she would do anything to protect her children. That is the one thing I am certain of. She is not a kind person, but she is a protector, like you." Daniel and the three princesses activated the distress beacon on the morning of the 7th day. They had no way of knowing if anyone would receive it or how long rescue would take. They had food for perhaps 2 weeks if they were careful. They had warmth and shelter. But they also knew that every day they remained hidden, the danger increased. Someone would eventually discover them. The only question was whether it would be Daniel's government first, or the. During those days, something unexpected happened. Daniel and the three princesses became a small family. In the evenings, they shared stories. In and Aura told him about their home world, about the great crystalline cities of the empire, about their friends and their studies. Told him about her responsibilities as the eldest daughter and her fear that she might fail to protect her younger sisters. Daniel shared his fears as well. He told them about his worry that he had betrayed his own people by helping them. He talked about how alone he felt, and how helping them had given him a sense of purpose that his military service had never provided. On the 10th night, as they sat together by the fire in the ranger station, placed her hand on Daniel's shoulder. It was a gesture of trust that would have been unthinkable a week earlier. "Whatever happens next," she said, "you have shown us that humans are more than we believed. You have shown us that there is goodness in species that are different from our own. That is a gift we will never forget." Daniel looked at the three young women who had become his responsibility and his purpose. He did not know what the future held, but he knew that he would protect them with everything he had. The attack came on the 11th day, without warning. Daniel was outside the ranger station chopping wood when he heard the sound of an engine. It was not a helicopter or a military vehicle. It was something he did not recognize. He immediately went inside and told the three princesses to hide in the back room and lock the door. Understood immediately that something was wrong. "The pirates?" she asked quietly. "Possibly," Daniel said. "Or worse, stay hidden. Do not come out unless I tell you it is safe." Daniel grabbed his weapon and went outside. A heavy transport vehicle had stopped about 50 yards from the ranger station. Men began climbing out. There were 6 of them, and they were armed with weapons that looked far more advanced than anything Daniel had ever seen. They wore mixed armor, the kind worn by mercenaries and bounty hunters who worked across the galaxy. One of them, a large man with scars on his face, called out, "Commander Daniel Brooks, we know you have something we want, 3 princesses. You can make this easy and give them to us, or we can make it very difficult." Daniel's mind worked quickly. These were not Earth military. These were off-world bounty hunters who had somehow tracked the distress beacon signal. They had reached Earth before they could mount a rescue. This was worse than he had feared. "I don't know what you're talking about," Daniel called back. The man laughed. "You are wasting time. We have trackers. We know they are in that building. You have 2 choices. You can walk away and live, or you can be a hero and die." Daniel did not respond. He was already analyzing the terrain around him. The ranger station was at the bottom of a small valley. There were rocks and trees to the east, offering cover. The mercenaries had stopped in an open area where they had the advantage of visibility. If he could get them to come at him in the forest, he could use the landscape to his benefit. Daniel fired a single shot that struck a rock near the mercenaries' vehicle. It was not aimed at them, but it was a clear message. The man's smile disappeared. "Have it your way," he shouted. What followed was a fierce and brutal firefight. The mercenaries had better weapons and superior technology, but Daniel had something they did not have. He knew every inch of the terrain around the ranger station. He moved through the forest like a ghost, firing from positions they could not predict, then disappearing before they could return fire. For 2 hours the battle raged. Daniel took several cuts and bruises from flying debris, but he was not seriously hit. The mercenaries, however, were not having the same success. One of them was hit in the shoulder and fell back to their vehicle. Another became so frustrated that he charged Daniel's position blindly and was knocked unconscious with a well-placed strike. But Daniel knew he could not win. There were too many of them, and their weapons were simply more powerful. He was holding them back, but he was not defeating them. Eventually, they would push through his defense. The princesses would be captured or killed. Daniel made a decision that went against every instinct he had. He used his communication device to contact the military base. "This is Commander Brooks," he said into the radio. "I am under attack at the ranger station in the Cascade Mountains. I have civilian casualties. I need emergency support immediately. This is not a drill." The reply came back within seconds. "Commander, we are sending 2 helicopters and a ground team. ETA 12 minutes. Hang tight." Daniel knew that his secret was now exposed. When the military arrived and saw the 3 alien princesses, everything would change. But his life was more important than his security. The mercenaries heard the helicopters before they saw them. The sound of military transport aircraft approaching made them realize they had been beaten. They retreated to their vehicle, grabbed their wounded, and attempted to drive away. But military vehicles were already blocking the mountain road. There was nowhere for them to go. Within minutes, the man and his 5 remaining mercenaries were in military custody. The ranger station was surrounded by soldiers. Daniel walked out with his hands up, knowing that his life had just changed forever. The military commander who arrived on the first helicopter was General Hayes, a tough veteran who had served with Daniel for several years. She stared at him with confusion and anger. "Brooks, what in God's name is going on here?" she demanded. "There are 3 princesses inside," Daniel said calmly. "They crashed here 11 days ago while fleeing from pirate attack. I have been protecting them while waiting for their rescue. Please, one of them has been injured. She needs medical attention." General Hayes's face went pale. "Are you telling me there are 3 alien royals in that building? Do you understand what you have done? Do you understand the political disaster you have just created?" "I understand," Daniel said, "but they needed help and I gave it. I take full responsibility for my actions." In was rushed to a field hospital that was set up on the military base within hours. The bullet wound she had received from stray fire during the battle was serious. The medical team worked for 4 hours to stabilize her condition. By evening, she was alive, but barely. Did not leave inside. She held her sister's hand and spoke to her in their own language, words of love and encouragement. Aura wept quietly, her fear and confusion overwhelming her. Daniel was placed under military guard. He was not arrested exactly, but he was not free to move about either. General Hayes questioned him for hours about every detail of what had happened. The military scrambled to contact the Empire and explain the situation. Late that night, as Daniel sat alone in a guarded room, was allowed to visit him for a few minutes. She looked exhausted and frightened, but her eyes were clear. "Thank you," she said simply. "You gave her a chance to live. Whatever happens now, you gave her that chance." "I should have protected her better," Daniel said. "She should never have been in danger." "You protected us as much as any person could have," said. "You protected us with your life. My mother will know this, and she will remember." The next morning, a message arrived from the Empire. A diplomatic fleet was being sent to Earth immediately. The Empress herself was coming to retrieve her daughters. The diplomatic fleet arrived on the 3rd day. 3 massive warships emerged from hyperspace near Earth's orbit, their hulls gleaming with advanced technology. The appearance of the fleet caused immediate panic on Earth. Military forces went to high alert. Governments held emergency meetings. Some world leaders feared this was an invasion. But the ships did not attack. Instead, they transmitted a message in perfect English. The Empress requested permission to land a diplomatic shuttle at the military base where her daughters were being held. She wanted to speak with the human commander who had protected her children. General Hayes authorized the landing, though she kept military forces on high alert. When the shuttle descended, it was enormous and ornate. The hull was covered in patterns that looked almost like jewelry. When the door opened, what emerged took everyone's breath away. Empress was tall and commanding. She wore ceremonial armor made of a material that seemed to shimmer between blue and silver. Her skin was the same gray-blue color as her daughter's, but her eyes were different. They were sharp and calculating, the eyes of a warrior who had ruled an empire for 40 years. A full guard of royal soldiers accompanied her, each one standing motionless in perfect military formation. General Hayes met the Empress in the main conference room of the military base. Translators were present, though it became clear that Empress spoke English as well as her daughters. Her accent was heavier, but her vocabulary was extensive. "I am Empress of the Empire," she said, her voice cold and direct. "I am here to retrieve my daughters. I am also here to understand what happened during their time on your world." General Hayes spent the next hour explaining everything. She described how Daniel had found the princesses in the wreckage. She explained how he had kept them hidden, how he had protected them from mercenary attack, and how he had risked his own life to keep them safe. The Empress listened without changing expression. When the briefing was finished, Empress did something unexpected. She requested to see Commander Daniel Brooks in person. He was brought to the conference room, still under guard. When he saw the Empress, he understood immediately the weight of her presence. This was not just a political leader. This was the ruler of a civilization that spanned hundreds of worlds. Studied Daniel with the intensity of a predator examining prey. She said nothing for a long time. Then she asked a single question. "Why did you do this?" Daniel stood straight and met her gaze directly. "Because they needed protection," he said simply. "Because I could provide that protection. That was enough." "You risked your career. You risked your freedom. You violated the treaty between our peoples," said. "All for 3 strangers of a different species." "Yes," Daniel said. Empress' expression did not change, but something shifted in her eyes. "A warrior would have done the same," she said. "We are a species that values loyalty and the protection of family above all else. Perhaps humanity is not as primitive as I believed." Before Daniel could respond, the door to the conference room opened. The three princesses entered. In was pale and weakened from her injuries, but she had insisted on walking into the room herself. When she saw Daniel, she moved toward him immediately. An aura followed. The three young women surrounded Daniel, their gratitude and affection clear in every gesture. In took his hand, placed her forehead against his in a gesture that was clearly a symbol of deep respect in culture. Aura simply stood close to him, as if his presence alone was protection. Empress watched this scene without speaking. Her guards shifted uncomfortably, not sure how their Empress would react. But when she finally spoke, her voice had changed. It was still commanding, but something else had entered it, something that might have been respect. "My daughters trust you," she said to Daniel. "My oldest has never trusted easily. For her to show you such affection speaks to the depth of your character." She turned to General Hayes. "I wish to speak with Commander Brooks privately," she said. Everyone else was asked to leave the room. Daniel found himself alone with Empress of the Empire. His heart was beating hard, but his voice remained steady. "You could have let them die," said. "You could have reported them to your government immediately. You could have used their capture to gain advantage in negotiations with our empire. You did none of these things." "No," Daniel said, "I protected them." "Why?" asked. "Give me the real answer, not the simple answer." Daniel thought carefully. "Because strength is not measured only in power," he said. "My world teaches us that the measure of a person is how they treat those who are weaker than themselves. I had the ability to protect them, so I did. That is the only reason any of us need to understand." Empress was quiet for a very long time. She walked to the window and looked out at the earth below. When she turned back to Daniel, there was a difference in her face. It was slight, but it was there. "The Empire has viewed humanity as a lesser species," she said. "We believed that you were driven only by aggression and the desire for conquest. We believed that concepts like honor and selfless protection were beyond your capacity. You have proven us wrong." She held out a small object to Daniel. It was a medal, shaped like a star, made of a material that seemed to glow from within. "This is a medal of the royal house. It has been given to perhaps 10 individuals in the history of the empire. I am giving it to you. You are now officially recognized as a guardian of the royal house and a trusted friend of the throne." Daniel took the medal. The weight of it in his hand was both literal and symbolic. He understood that accepting this gift meant something significant had changed between his species and the. "Thank you, Empress," he said. "Thank you, Commander," replied. "You have given me much to think about. I came to Earth believing I would simply retrieve my daughters and return home. Instead, I find myself reconsidering what my empire believes about humanity." The Empress left the conference room and embraced her 3 daughters. The reunion was emotional, though showed their emotions differently than humans. In, still recovering from her wounds, was held carefully. Whispered something to her mother that made the Empress's eyes focus intently on Daniel one more time. Before the Empress and her daughters boarded the shuttle to return to their ship, approached Daniel one final time. She held his hand in both of hers. "My mother respects you," said. "That is a rare thing. She tells me that she intends to propose a new accord between our peoples, one based not on distance and caution but on mutual respect and cooperation. You have made that possible." "I just did what was right," Daniel said. "Exactly," said, "and that is what makes it matter." The fleet departed Earth's orbit the next morning, but the changes they left behind would reshape the future of human-alien relations forever. 3 days after the fleet departed, Daniel was officially cleared of any wrongdoing by the military. An investigation had been conducted, and though he had technically violated protocol, the outcome had been so positive that no charges were filed against him. In fact, the military recognized his actions as heroic. He was promoted to the rank of senior commander, and given a commendation for his service and courage. But the real changes were happening at a higher level of government. Representatives from every major nation on Earth received the same message from the Empire. The Empress requested an emergency diplomatic summit within 2 weeks. She had a proposal that would fundamentally alter the relationship between humanity and the galactic community. The summit took place at the United Nations headquarters. Empress attended in person, which was unprecedented. No leader had ever visited Earth before. When she arrived, every camera on the planet was focused on her. In a formal announcement, broadcast to billions of humans across the world, Empress made her declaration. "I have come to your world to make an announcement that will change the future of the Empire and the human race," she said. The translation programs worked flawlessly, broadcasting her words in every human language. "When I arrived at your military base, I expected to find my daughters in the hands of primitives who would demand payment for their return. Instead, I found a human being who had risked everything to protect them. This human asked for nothing. He expected no reward. He simply did what he believed was right." Empress paused and looked directly at the cameras. For decades, the Empire has treated humanity with caution and distance. We believed that humans lacked the capacity for honor and sacrifice that define the advanced civilizations of the galaxy. We were wrong. She held up a replica of the medal of the royal house. "I am here to formally announce that the Empire is proposing a new accord with the human race. We wish to move beyond the old treaty of non-interference. We propose a partnership based on mutual respect and cooperation." The news spread across the world like fire. Humans who had always dreamed of joining the greater galactic community suddenly found those doors opening. They began sharing technology with Earth. Trade agreements were negotiated. Universities began offering programs in language and culture. Young humans were invited to study in the educational centers. But the changes went deeper than just politics and technology. The story of what Daniel had done spread throughout human culture. He had not sought fame or recognition, but it found him anyway. Across the world learned about the commander who had protected 3 alien princesses. Stories were written about him. A filmmaker made a documentary about his actions and how they had changed human-alien relations forever. More importantly, Daniel's example inspired a change in how humans thought about themselves. For years, many people had believed that humanity's role in the galaxy was secondary. Humans were younger than the great civilizations that had explored the stars. Humans had less technology, less power, less influence. But Daniel had shown that humanity possessed something that could not be created through technology alone. He had shown that humans possessed honor, sacrifice, and the capacity for selfless action. Scientists and philosophers began studying what they called human. They argued that while humans might not have the most advanced technology, they had something that no other species possessed in equal measure. They had the ability to choose to do what was right, even when it cost them everything. They had the capacity for unconditional love and protection. They had the ability to trust and form bonds with those completely different from themselves. 2 years after the first meeting, Empress visited Earth again. This time, it was an official state visit. She asked to see Commander Daniel Brooks. They met in a private setting, away from the cameras and the politicians. "My daughters have written to me about you every week since we returned home," said. "Tells me that you taught her that strength and mercy are not opposites, but partners. It tells me that you showed her that the most powerful thing a being can do is choose to protect the weak. Or it tells me that you taught her to believe in the goodness of strangers." "I did not teach them anything," Daniel said. "I simply protected them." "Exactly," said. "That is precisely what a true teacher does. You did not lecture them about honor. You showed them honor through your actions. That is far more powerful than any words." The Empress handed Daniel another gift. It was a communication device. the same type that the royal family used to stay in contact with one another across the vast distances of space. "My daughters wish to remain in contact with you," said. "I approve of this. A friendship between a human warrior and the daughters of the throne is something I believe will strengthen the bonds between our peoples." Daniel accepted the device, understanding the weight of what it represented. He was no longer just a military commander. He was a bridge between two civilizations. As the years passed, the changes that had begun with Daniel's simple act of protection continued to expand. Human explorers began traveling deeper into space. Humans and worked together on scientific projects and military alliances. Young humans trained alongside young warriors. The boundaries between the species began to blur, not physically, but culturally and politically. Daniel eventually retired from military service. He became a teacher, instructing both human and students about the importance of honor, sacrifice, and the protection of the innocent. His classroom was packed with students who wanted to learn from the man who had changed the course of history with a single act of courage. Years later, when Daniel was old, visited him one final time. She was now the eldest advisor to her mother and one of the most respected leaders in the empire. She sat with Daniel and looked at the medals and honors that covered his walls. "Do you know what my mother asked me to tell you?" said. "She asked me to tell you that the greatest strength of any ruler is knowing how to recognize and honor true character. You taught her this lesson through your actions." "Your mother is a great ruler," Daniel said. "I am just a soldier who did what was right." "No," said. "You are the human who taught an entire galaxy that your species possesses a value that cannot be measured in weapons or technology. You are the bridge that brought two civilizations together. That is far more than just a soldier." When Daniel finally passed away decades later, the empire observed a day of mourning. Empress herself made a public statement honoring his memory. She called him a brother to thee and a founder of the new era of peace and cooperation between their species. But perhaps the greatest honor came from ordinary people, both human and. Across the galaxy, children of both species grew up learning about the commander who had chosen to protect 3 lost princesses. His story became a reminder that courage and compassion could change the universe. His legacy became a bridge that held 2 species together, built on the simple truth that some things are worth protecting, regardless of who needs the protection. In the end, Daniel had not set out to change history. He had simply seen 3 beings in need and chosen to help. But in that simple choice, he had demonstrated something that would echo across the ages. He had shown that humanity's greatest strength was not its weapons or its technology. It was the capacity of individual humans to choose what was right, even when it cost them everything. And that single truth changed everything.